12.
Call to order this pre-agenda meeting for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, January 17, 2024. Roll call.
Blair.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt. Rissler.
Here.
Allen. Carroll.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. At this time, we will go into the pre-agenda meeting, and Alan, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Hope everybody has had a safe few ice days, I guess it is. It was AML last week. Really enjoyed the conference. Learned a lot. Was able to talk to people that are doing similar jobs, mayors and city administrators. So it was a really good experience. Met some good contacts and had some really good classes. So appreciate you guys letting me attend that. Moving forward, well, before I start that, just I know with all this weather that started on Sunday, with the staff just told me it was very challenging. It was when you're dealing with equipment and you're dealing with below sub-zero temperatures, it's really, really hard, and you're dealing with water. Just an unbelievable shout out to staff, anywhere from garbage to streets to every time I came out to check the streets, someone's out, they're snow plowing, and 24/7 around the clock, and dealing with electrical issues and dealing with sewer issues and dealing with water issues. We're still having issues with pipes today. So just a big shout out to them, and thank you for the job you do, and I appreciate it. But moving on to the pre-agenda meeting, if you take a look at the consent agenda, take a look A through F, and staff will be available for any questions that you would like to talk about, anything on the agenda or consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, do I ask permission during the?
The only reason that I say yes is because it kind of keeps us in the practice of what we do in each meeting. So,
Okay.
so yes, but yes, Betsy, yes.
I would like to discuss the procedures and organizational matters of the Board of Directors. I know some stuff was changed. The 3 days instead of 5 days, which that's fine. I don't want the part taken out where the city clerk is supposed to notify the board immediately. That didn't happen last time, but it was supposed to, and I think it should be kept. I think the board should be made aware if the mayor vetoes something. Under C, B.
I'm just looking this over real quick. I know some of the changes that we had made, I was just trying to be in line with state law.
Yeah, and the rest of it is, but as a board, we can choose to add things to that. And this has been on the board rules for quite some time, so I didn't want it removed. And I do think it's important, if there is a veto, that the board should be notified immediately, and they were not the last time it happened. So that kept in the board rules, please.
Add it. Again, we can't vote on anything, so tonight, we can make any of those suggestions and anything the board wants to do at the board meeting. We can make those adjustments as you guys vote to make those changes. Is that your understanding, Mayor?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's not necessarily a change, it's asking you not to change it.
Okay.
And there was also, there was something that was left off, and I don't know if it was intentional or not. It's under 6C, presentation of agenda items. The minutes of previous meetings, like the Planning Commission, Parks Advisory Board, et cetera. I really appreciate having those notes, especially the Planning Commission, since we base decisions off of their recommendations. Yeah, but I noticed it was not on, it was removed from what you sent us.
I'm sorry, Director, I'm getting bits and pieces of what you're saying. Chris, are you hearing her good on her mic?
I'm not hearing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to stay back like I was told.
you follow my directions, I'm sorry.
I know.
I was just getting bits and pieces, I apologize.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
So, the first thing I requested was to keep, if the mayor vetoes, that we be notified, the board be notified immediately. This one is number 6 under C. Minutes of the previous meetings of the Planning Commission, Parks Advisory Board, and any other board or commission, blah, 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 is provided in the board packet online. I don't know if that was intentionally removed or if it was accidentally left off in what you sent to us in the agenda minutes. or
Yeah, I
not
think what I
minute-
provided was, one, that the original board rules that you set, and then just any grammaticals. The only changes that we made were just grammatical, and I think we highlighted in yellow.
Then this part was an oversight. It was left off.
Correct.
I mean, or I guess my question is, was it an oversight? And if so, it needs to be added back in.
I'll be happy to look at that.
Okay. It's on this agenda packet, it's on page 12, where it should be, but it's not there. Yeah.
If you look at what we have printed out under 6, presentation of agenda items, right? And if you look down under C, which I think is where you're looking, the originals, that what we've been operating off of for now, do have that listed, that those minutes will be provided in the board packet online. So if that is left off, it was probably inadvertently done so, because that is the very last paragraph on that page. And I
Yeah.
think that's what she's asking, to make sure we have it in there.
Right. That it gets included
Yeah.
because it was,
Right,
like you said, inadvertently probably left off.
yeah.
But I didn't want it to get left off in the final.
Be happy to do
thing.
that.
Okay, that's all I have on that.
Excellent. Is there anything else on pre-agenda that you'd like to discuss? And if you have any changes that you would like to see, you can please send me an email on any suggestions, and I will get them to the other board members on suggestions for rules or else that you would like to change. But if you'd get that to myself or Barbara, we'll make sure that I get it to the other board members for discussion before next Tuesday. Anything else on consent? Okay, moving on to contracts and approvals. Letter G, Budget Amendment, Public Service Department, Parks and Recreations Division, Park and Rec Conceptual Design, Operations Planning. Here, available to for questions. I think what was sent out to you is when we had the company come in and just give you the different, I can't remember, well, I'll look on here. But we gave you 3 options. The one was the options to do the complete study, and then you got a medium option and a lower option. I went ahead and put the number 1 option, and that's up to the board to vote on which one you want to go with. Travis is here and Jason's here to answer any questions you may have on that. Travis, Travis, do you have your numbers in front of you? Just come and just kind of give them the three numbers.
Good afternoon, Board, Mayor, Travis Cheney, Parks and Recreation Manager. If you will look on the staff report, the memo for this item, page 2, it's probably broken out the clearest for you. There were 3 different scoping options that we brought back to the board after the pre-agenda meeting back in November. Option 1 is the full scope that we continue to recommend for this project. So that full scope would include the statistically valid survey. There's a little note in the memo about the statistically valid survey. Staff feels that this is an important element to include in the conceptual design and operations planning. And the reasons being, if you take out the statistically valid survey, which is one thing that could be removed in another one of the smaller scopes, we would still do kind of informal online surveys through this process. The informal online surveys are really useful. They gauge community involvement. They can have a really high number of participants. You know, it can sometimes number in the thousands. The difference between the kind of informal online surveys versus the statistically valid surveys is, you know, there are oftentimes an opportunity for, like, say, a really well-organized interest group to be overrepresented in an informal survey because they're not scientific in any way. So let's say that folks who are really, really wanting to see a new, say, baseball complex out at this recreation center, a well-organized group of those folks could get on and really kind of bump up the numbers that wouldn't be representative of the community. Now, again, it's important to see these sorts of things. Who's the most excited about various things out there. We recommend also doing the statistically valid survey, which again is a scientific representation of the population as a whole. And so you're going to be able to capture those folks who, you know, potentially couldn't care less about a rec center. And wouldn't, you know, get online to respond. This firm will continue to reach out until you have a truly random, statistically valid sample size of the population. And so once you use both of those kinds of data gathering, you've got a much more kind of rounded and full set of data in front of you to try to make the most informed decision. So that's what the statistically valid survey would do. And so that is removed in both the middle scoping option and the smallest scoping option. In your sort of center scoping option, that's aquatic center assessment only, we've removed all existing facilities assessment from the full scope and just left the aquatic center. And if y'all don't have it in front of you, let me pull it up here. Chris, I don't know if you can. There we go. So in our, I'll call it option B, aquatic center assessment only. In this option, we've removed any statistically valid survey, and then we've also removed any consideration of any other park facilities with the exception of the family aquatic center. The reason that staff would leave this in this option B is that this is the facility that, one, takes the most specialization to assess and to understand. It's also one of the most expensive facilities to maintain, and it's one of our older facilities. It's 30 years old. Gauging what we've heard from the public through the 2040 comprehensive plan, folks are really wanting something different with aquatics in some way or another, whether that's indoor aquatics, a larger splash pad, improvements to our current aquatic center. That was one of the things that came through loud and clear in the 2040 comprehensive planning phase. And so staff continues to recommend that if we drop the scope down, that we at least include the family aquatic center, only because of the overall cost of operating that and the age of it. Staff feels that it needs to be included in thinking through what would potentially happen with aquatics at a new facility. Would we keep the aquatic center and upgrade it? If so, What would that cost? What do people want? Would we build new aquatics at a rec center and, bulldoze the aquatic center? These are all questions that we kind of have to hold in balance as we're thinking about some sort of new large facility. And so staff recommends that at a minimum, we keep the aquatic center because it will only get more expensive to maintain in its current state. It's getting older. I think I may have mentioned we've seen attendance decline slightly over the past couple of years. Some of that's COVID related, but coming out of COVID, we've still seen attendance at the aquatic center decline. This could be totally anecdotal, but one of the things that we hear anecdotally from folks is that they're going to smaller towns close by to us, Decatur, Gravette, Gentry, that have newer aquatic facilities, larger splash pads, things like that. And so if we continue on this trend of kind of doing nothing new at our current aquatic center, it will only get more expensive to operate as it ages, but our revenue from folks coming to it will either hold steady or decline. So we feel that it'd be really important at this stage as we're considering kind of a center and gravity shift in the Parks Department to a potential new rec center that we, at a minimum, do a deep dive into this facility, consider what can we do with it? Can we keep it going another 30 years? If so, what would that look like? And again,
Travis,
yes, sir.
if I may, board, again, you guys have seen a presentation in front of you, and it was a very good presentation. So what's in front of you is the full scope at 228, or you can do the aquatic center assessment, which is 181, or the minimal at 162. We will bring 228 to you, but again, it's a pleasure of the board. You can vote on those three or none at all. That is totally the pleasure of the board. One of the things that Travis and Jason and I have been talking about, Travis is talking about now, is this the aquatic center's 30 years old. We're starting to have plumbing issues. Things are going to have to be replaced. So again, leap forward 5 to 10 years from now, where will the aquatic center be? So coming in and doing a study, it'll let us know for, a little bit less money just where we are in 10 or 20 years, because, I'm sorry, another 10 years. Another 10 years, we're 40 years old. Will it be able to, so that's where we're at. So I get into this a lot because we've had many, many conversations, unless you want to have more. So are there any questions for myself, Travis, Jason, anything we can answer? All right, thank you, Travis. And then moving to the service agreement, Public Service Department, Park and Recreations, Youth Sports Programming, Boys and Girls Club of the Western Benton County. Staff is available for questions if you have anything there. If no questions, we'll move on to regular scheduled items. Ordinance 24-01, second reading, vacation of utility easement, 816 East Main. Staff is available for questions also there if you have any. If no questions, moving on to ordinance J, ordinance 24-02, second reading, amending section 102-21 of City Municipal Code, rezoning from C2 to R4, 4290 Sherry Whitlock Drive. Questions? Moving on to resolutions. Resolution 08-24, setting hearing date for alleyway vacation of 806 East University Street. I have no questions. Move on to resolutions 09-24, final plat development permit, Castlewood Edition, 22000 block of Davidson Road. Questions? Moving on to Resolution 1024, final plat development permit, Foxtail Village subdivision, 600 to 900 block of Highway 16. And N, Resolution 11-24, final plat development permit, Blackberry Estates Edition, 1300 to 1800 block of North Dogwood Street. Any questions for resolutions? If not, we can still, it's the pleasure of the board. I wanted to set aside to talk about board goals tonight, but I know we're less two board members, so we can still have that discussion if that's the pleasure of the board. Just where you want to go, in the future and how you want to do it. Does the board, Mayor, do you still want to have that conversation about board goals tonight?
Board, would you like to have that conversation just for discussion's sake? Kind of input from those of you that are here? Some ideas maybe that you would like to have considered? Would you like to move forward just for that reason, to get that? Okay, I would say yes, that they
So again, staff's available for questions, and one of the things that I see in goals are what I worry about if I think I gave each of you that are here tonight what your goals were when goals were set, what the current goals are that the board brought to staff that we're working on. One of my concerns, if we get away from goals, let's use the example of gasification. Gasification is something that we're looking into that I think will personally, help our city in the future. Just in a few months from now or the first of the year, we could possibly have 3 new board members. Those 3 new board members come in and then they decide that they don't want to support the goals of the current board. So again, we have to be careful, in my opinion, of just doing away with goals. Because long-range goals, short-term goals, we have to come up with a strategic way of doing this, because we'll have 3 new board members, and then those 4 board members, or the board members will be together for 2 years. I'm talking about January of '25. That board will be together for 2 years, and then there'll be more seats possibly, running. The board could be back together, but again, we're constantly changing those goals. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, and open to discussion or thoughts that you may have.
I'm new, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Betsy.
Obviously, I'm new to all of this, but it seems to me like board goals should be things that benefit the entire community, and to change over time. Something I would like to see, and I don't know if I didn't see an email with the board goals or if I'm missing them somewhere.
I think right, you weren't at the board at that time, so
Right.
you didn't have any goals, or you weren't a
Yeah.
part of those. So I think what I did is, last time we were here, I gave you what the goals were for the city. One of the goals was Park and Recreational Center. There were several, I think there were 6 goals.
Okay.
Does any other board members have that with them?
Well, I'll just say things I would like to see, and, well, I think pursuing the gasification would be awesome, but benefit the entire community, and it's been discussed a little bit, is the elderly, like assisted living center and things like that. I know it's not the city's responsibility to build one, but how do we attract, what do we do to bring that kind of thing in? Because to me, we're sorely lacking when it comes to our elderly population.
Those are some conversations I've had with some board members. I think you're right in line with the conversations I had. And I think that would be a great goal, is a couple of the ideas. Reed, do you want to share your idea on, I know we've had conversation, not just having a senior living, but having stages of that.
Right, yeah. A lot of companies, at least in other places, have the independent living to the transition to assisted living to the nursing care.
Director Carroll, did you want to, any conversation on that?
Yeah, this has been my mantra from day one. I believe we need that senior living. It's doing a couple of things. When we don't have senior living, when you decide to downsize as a senior, and this is maybe a harsh way of saying it, but you're cannibalizing homes for those who are looking for starter homes. Or you're competing with them together. And when you're later on in life, usually you have the finances to where you can make a better offer than someone who's trying to get that first home. So instead of having that competition, I think it would be good to where the starter homes were just that. And those who want to maintain quality of life but have their own place, I think that's a necessity. And what's happening right now, if that's your desire, you've got to move and to leave your community, your church, grocery shopping, friends, family, to go be somewhere else so that you can be able to get up and around during the day. We need to stop that and allow them the opportunity to stay here. I've been pushing that since day one. Right now, what I have seen as far as the real estate industry, if you can do something like that, let's say you make an 8% return here in Siloam Springs, you can go over to the corridor and possibly make a 13 to 15% return. Where are you going to go?
Right.
So incentivize the building of that so our seniors can stay and be in the community where they've lived for some of them decades of their whole life.
Thank you, because I think that should be a priority. You make a lot of really good points, and I think as far as starter homes go, don't want to have to take care of the yard and all of that, so.
Yeah. But
Whether-
if you had a neighborhood of 2-bedroom, 2-bath homes with a carport or a garage, where you have the amenities that you wish to have, but somebody does your mowing, someone takes care of the exterior of the facility, and if you are at a point where you can take care of yourself, great. But if not, then have someone come in once, twice a week to clean the house, maybe make a meal or two, so you can transition properly. Right now, we are not set up as a city to transition. And I've seen it where people, they have a 2-story home, they live in the bottom, in the back half, because there's nowhere to go. To me, that's tough to see. I would like to be able to see us with the opportunity. Now, you may want to stay in your 5,000 square foot home and pay somebody to take care of all that. But right now, it's not a choice.
So how do we make it happen?
I like the idea of we all coming together in a separate meeting and stating what our board goals are and coming to a conclusion of what the majority want.
Yeah.
And I think that's only fair.
You can
And that's
bring-
kind of the way we've done it. We all bring our own ideas, and then we vote on what are maybe the top 3, or what we think is the majority.
Whenever I present something, I have the documentation behind it to say, these are the statistics, this is what I looked at.
Right. Tonight I just wanted to talk about goals, how you guys want to do that going forward. You are correct, Director Smiley. We can do that, but my concern was, I've had some directors tell me, well, because right now we have 6 or 7 goals. Some board members aren't in favor of a few of those goals, so are we not going to do those goals anymore? Do we want to set new goals? Staff just needs direction.
There
on
needs
how we-
to be long range and short range.
Correct.
And they've never been divided up before. And that's the problem, is sometimes these ones that we're looking at right now were 3 years ago, were 4 years ago. Well, things have changed, the economy has changed, the government's changed, we have grown as people. So there needs to be short-term goals and long-term goals. And that's
you.
what we didn't have.
I think you review your goals at the beginning of each year, because sometimes things, like Director Rissler says, things change.
Correct. So what I would like to do is just guidance on, would you like to do a workshop? Would you like me to set a pre-agenda? Because pre-agenda, we usually only have an hour. I think we need a workshop just to sit down. I will give you that time, and you guys bring the goals, and then we will look at the goals, and as a board, we'll pick the short-term and long-term goals that the board decides on. And it may be those short-term goals, or a 2-year period, why the board is together as a whole, or
And in an informal room, it gives us this is so formal, and, and I know Mark's going to be at the meeting when we have it, but it's informal, and we're free to speak, and we've had our time for research. We brought the stuff with us that we have the time to look at it.
But I'll set a workshop, because I also know we have a workshop coming up, to talk about the housing, or Airbnb, I'm sorry. We'll be talking about that soon. One of the things that staff and I have decided that we're going to take that, where we were 30-4, 30-6, Chris, I can't remember exactly, is just do 30 and get away from that bottom number, if that's what the board, and do we need to have a meeting? But I think people still want to have an opportunity to come and discuss. So we do have that on our radar to do that very soon, but we need to start talking about goals pretty quickly too, where staff has some direction. So I will set up a workshop for that. Chris, Kevin, or Ben, I know you guys have been working on senior housing. You want to talk a little bit about that, how that's on our radar? And we are in the planning stages of that for the future.
I just start by, I think that the director that spoke about a cluster, we refer to that as cluster housing, where you have these developments where you have multiple housing units that are typically on one parcel. I've already scheduled a meeting actually with my planning staff next week, that one of the things we're talking about is expansion proposals for expanding our townhome eligibility for different zoning considerations. I think a lot of what we're talking about here is making things available through the zoning process. So we want to try to find what's missing in our zoning that would attract these type of assisted living facilities. I know in Rogers, they have some of the larger ones in Northwest Arkansas that have just moved into those areas that are about to open. And they're expanding throughout the region. So I think that we can see what's attracting them to that location. I know one of the things here, it's not just competitiveness on once that single family housing is built, it's also the availability of land. So when you have a lot that is for sale and you're competing as a person that has to build this larger facility for assisted living, you're competing against other entities that are looking for property to subdivide. So I think that that's when we get into zoning considerations and looking at updates to our zoning and maybe even considerations in our master future land use map, to try to incorporate some of those ideas that it's definitely something that we can look at through our planning processes, through our long-range planning processes, whenever we're talking about development considerations, different sizes of setbacks, what you're allowed to put on larger single parcels. That's a conversation it's kind of interesting that we brought that up tonight, because that's something that we had just put on the agenda for next week internally to start having those conversations with our staff. So I'll see if Ben has
Can I ask
anything.
you a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
So, sorry, I'm trying to figure out these mics. Reed mentioned the incentives. What kind of incentives? Because you're talking about zoning, which is
Right.
different than the incentives that can be offered. Are you guys looking at the incentives that can be offered to encourage?
And Ben, you may be able to elaborate on any incentives that we already have in place. I know that there's density incentives that other communities have been able to use in the past. So there's density incentives usually allow you to increase density if you do a specific use, or that can be granted by the city for specific uses. So that is definitely something that we could look at as density incentivization to allow additional units on areas that are being used for specific purposes.
One thing I would add, Ben Rhodes, two things I would add. First of all, just to go off of what you're saying, in our toolbox we have the PUD zone, which if you remember the assisted living facility that was out off of Progress Avenue that the board looked at, I think about a couple years ago now, that was through the PUD zone district. And we're able to work with developers to provide incentives to them because they're requesting higher densities or lesser setbacks, things of that nature to fit the units in that they're wanting to do that don't fit squarely with our zoning. So we can look at that on a case-by-case basis through the PUD zone process. The second thing I wanted to bring up is in the Unified Development Code that I'm working on, I want to add in accessory dwelling units, which would be to allow for, by right, someone to have a mother-in-law suite or a granny flat or whatever you call that behind their home as an independent dwelling unit, our current zoning doesn't allow that. Unless you're in the R3 zone district, you're not allowed to do that. This would allow it in most cases in the R2, which is the standard single-family zoning district in the city. So I think that would be a great shot in the arm for what you're talking about, where someone might want to move in to a smaller unit closer to family and have the ability to do that. So we're looking at both of those things. So.
Also, I wasn't on the board when this workshop was here. On the development between Walmart and Lowe's, I know the city agreed to provide $1.5 million in incentives. To me, this is a case where incentives like that would actually be very beneficial and valuable, and especially since we did vote to be a pro-life city, that includes the elderly. So is that a potential also to offer them incentives like that?
Kevin Moore, city engineer. That's certainly something that we can bring to the table, kind of keep in reference for us. So those incentives would always come before the board for you to approve on a case-by-case basis as an economic development package. And a lot of times, specifically for these kind of senior living, assisted living centers, they're looking at federal grants that have pretty tight timelines. And so in the past, the couple examples that we haven't chosen to do all the work that's required on our end for that package because they're under grant timelines for the projects that they're doing. But that's certainly something that we can mention to developers as they come to us with projects.
So is there something we can do to help when they're on that tight timeline?
I think just staff knowing that that's something that the board wants us to pursue helps us with that, because a lot of times we can tell the developer that if you can kind of put this package together, because one of the issues is that state law requires anything over $100,000 has to have an economic development, an economic impact study done by a third party. And so that's something that if they know coming in that we would be accepting of possibly offering some incentives based off of that, then they'd be willing to fund that, because that's something that they have to fund on their own, and not knowing for sure whether they would receive any benefit from that can be a deterrent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. The list of goals or whatever, I probably misplaced them. Can we get an email of those ones you mentioned and also the full list of goals,
Yes,
please?
ma'am. I'll make sure, Barb and I were discussing a second ago, make sure we email that out. What I'd like to do is have that workshop quickly as possible. I'm looking at February 6th before our first board meeting in February, if that would work for the board. And if it's not, you can send me an email and let me know that that wouldn't work, but that would be at 5 o'clock on February 6th. Because I would like to possibly turn around probably a meeting or two later after that and have the Airbnb workshop. I know it's throwing a lot, but we've got to get goals. But hopefully that would give you enough time to, I know a lot of you have been working on your goals already, to be able to bring them. Or if we need to push that back, I'm good with that too.
My
Lisa.
concern isn't being prepared. I can get prepared at any time. My concern is we put it at 5 and our board meeting starts at 6:30. That's the one thing I hate, is feeling like I'm rushed to say what I have to say. Because I want to feel like, I don't like when we feel like we have to hurry through a board meeting, or I feel like I'm not being cut off because we're rushing, and I don't want that. I wanted to give more time than just an hour and 20 minutes, or,
Are you wanting it on a separate day?
I can do
because if it
that.
goes over, we can actually have an in-depth conversation if we need to.
We can do that. We can set a separate date to do that.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah, we
At the library.
And one of the things we can do, since you're here on a pre-agenda, the next couple agendas look pretty short. we can come in an hour early or stay an hour. It's Wednesdays are a little harder because I know a lot of people have things, rush off to do church if you want to meet, or I could get a total separate date. If you guys give me, if you want to have a separate date, I'm good with that. Staff's here during the day, so you just let us know, we'll be there.
Staff usually
I totally
doesn't
understand
attend.
you being, because this could be a longer conversation than an hour. And again, if we meet at 4, then we have a
Yeah.
meeting, we could be here, you'd have a long day.
Right. And staff usually doesn't attend. Usually it's just the board of directors and the city administrator, city attorney, and, Judy, I consider as a board.
Okay.
And then the paper.
And that's
And
how
then the
I,
public's welcome. They have had the public show up, but they sit on the side and they just listen.
right, and I know how you've done how you've done goals in the past. I just want to know if you guys want any changes on how we do this. I'm just looking for direction, and I'll be happy, I work for the pleasure of the board to listen to the goals and set the goals, for staff. Again, what I'm looking at, and I'll get back to that, Director Rissler, is like right now, some of the goals that were voted on was, annexation strategies, improve water quality, Sager Creek, increasing housing for seniors, improve 412 with RDOT, reduce speeding on local streets, reduce general fund dependency, utility funds and transfers, unified development code, reduce trips transporting arrestees to Benton County Jail, which we looked into that goal, and Chief can talk about that. There's some issues there that I think the Chief wants to go in a different direction. Public safety was something we've been addressing, and a park and rec center. So those are kind of some of the goals they are the goals that you voted on. And those, once you give us those goals, staff, I know the former administrator gave us those goals, and that's what we work on. So when staff brings that to you, those are things that they've been directed to bring to you. And that's kind of my question tonight. Are we going forward with those goals, or some goals that we don't want to work on? And we can talk about that at our meetings. But that's just sometimes causes a little bit of confusion. And again, when you set your goals, I will task, once that is voted on and you give me those list of goals, staff will start working on those. And it's kind of hard to be in midstream of that. And I like the idea of short and long-term goals, to be in midstream and say, ooh, I really don't like that idea anymore. And we have put a lot of time and effort into that. So that's kind of just, I know you know that, but just keep that in mind when we're working on that.
One thing I would like to add is when we give these goals and we list them out and we vote on them, but there's never, ever conversation after that. There might be things, just because I listed this as a goal, that I didn't think of that staff knows. Or there might be something that citizens know. I don't want staff wasting their time. Is there something that we need to know? Share it with us so that we can make the decision, do we want to keep that goal? Because I don't think that's ever been done in the past, is share with us, communicate with us that just because we said it doesn't mean it's set in stone and staff has to dedicate all their time to it.
Again, if updates come back to you, you're talking like updates where we are with this.
Yeah, or even if you put the list together and then you give it to staff and you discuss it with staff and staff's like, well, this idea that Rissler had sounds good, but here's the reality. Tell me, I'm okay with that. Just say,
We're in the, and I didn't mean to cut you off, I apologize.
No, that's fine.
On your question, that's why I like staff to be involved, because they can, before, I think it was just you, the administrator, and that, if staff is here, they can give you reasons why we might not be able to do that, because like Kevin says, this is a state law, or if it's something with gasification, Jason will be able to talk about that. So I think it's important for them just to be here to be able to answer your question if you have one.
But I would like it in an informal setting. This is such a formal setting, and I think the rest of us feel the same way.
Okay.
Like the library is so informal. It's just us coming together and bringing our mindsets together and making decisions.
I do
But we
thi-
still have to have a recording and things like
Yes.
that, which we could do, and that's fine, to have tables where we're closer together and we're rolling up our sleeves and get some work done. I get it. I like that idea.
I do think as a board, on a quarterly basis, Doesn't have to be a long meeting, but we could just say, is everybody still okay with these goals? Or do we need to delete, or do we need to add? And I think we need to look at them on a quarterly basis instead of waiting till the end of the year or the beginning of the year to, things change.
And I like that, because I was talking to the mayor, I guess, a month or so ago about goals and the direction and the way things have been done and some of the ideas that I have. And since the board voted not to do these, or voted to go forward with these goals, is the board going to vote that we're not going to do these goals anymore? And that's kind of where we're at. A lot of these goals are unattainable. We're working on all these goals. So again, I don't mind giving you quarterly or updates. It's good to have communicate to know where we're at.
I think before we delete a goal, I need to know, and I think Director Rissler stated this, we need to have staff say, this is doable, this is not doable, this is the problem.
And we're prepared. In a meeting, I'll find a date for us. We'll set something in the library. I'll see what that schedule is. I'll try to do it in February. And we'll also, during that meeting, we'll also give you an update of what we're doing with the goals we currently have. How about that?
Yeah, I'm not saying we disallow all the goals that we've already come up with. We just need to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
Well, it's a great point, both you and Director Rissler are making. It's just kind of like I was one that wanted the goal of in the needs, and a lot of the rules and laws have changed to actually to run a transport center. So it went from very doable to not very doable, and manpower is needed in other directions. So sometimes we have to come back and just say, thank you for that goal, but at this time, it's just not doable for the police department. Correct, Scott? Somewhere in there. So again, that's a great point. And that's what we just need to tell you, just because you set a goal, we're going to do everything we can, but if it's unattainable, we need you as a board to be understanding, and these are the reasons that we don't. Just tell you we can't. Let's give you reasons why we cannot do it at this. So we'll be happy to do that. No, I like that. Any other conversation? But what I'll do, so what I'm tasked with right now is I will find a date. We'll do it at the library. The staff will figure it out, and we'll sit down. So if you would start working on your goals and anything that you want to bring to the board, or to the board, bring to staff, we'll start, and we'll have that conversation. If we have enough time, we could, it maybe take 2 meetings. It may, hey, these are all the goals, and we kind of get away from it and decide what are the most important goals, and we got to decide. And the idea of, all right, let's do 5 short-term goals, and are we going to do 10 short-term goals? And these are our long-term goals. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I did like the idea, though, that all of the goals were put on the board, and then the board members rated what goal they thought was the most priority. Mm-hmm. Because we all have different priorities.
Right.
But we blend them together so that we're working together.
I like it. Okay.
If I could just say one thing about us having the meeting, I think that's a great idea. We have done it in the past, and it seemed to work well. But could you also bring to the board goals that have already been set and we have started working on? Staff has put time and effort in, we have actually spent dollars on, so they will know, this is a goal that we're really not crazy about, but we're invested this much into it at this point in time. Then you've got to make a decision. We're already into this much. So, is it worth it to stop now, or do we need to go forward with this and then look at other goals? But I think they need to know where we are on the things that they have agreed to previously, even a previous board had agreed to, so.
And we'll give you an update. Be
Yeah.
happy to do that. What you should have right now is the email with the current goals. Staff will get the same email, and we'll discuss where we're at, where we're going. Is this doable? Do we want to put any more money in this? And I think we all agree, because I've had a lot of you in the room, senior housing is very important to all of you. It's important to us. So I know that is a goal we need to look forward to, and it's things you've talked about in the past. So
And I'm sorry, if I could just, to that point, whenever Ben was talking about a couple of years ago, we were looking at this very thing. And at that time, we had a gentleman that had a nursing home. He owned it, was looking at property out that way toward where the hospital is and all of that, and was considering perhaps building that type of facility. Then he sold his nursing home. He has moved out of the area, but he had looked into and gotten information for what that would look like here. It might be worthwhile to reach out to him just to say, what did you see? Is it feasible for Siloam Springs? What does that look like? Because if he's already done that, give that to us to kind of use as a guidepost to go from here. To me, that would be beneficial to all of us, just to know what he's already gotten together.
No, it's a great point, because I know I've had discussions with community development just on senior housing. We've already got property that we'd like to set aside for this. The property we've been talking about, Ben, correct me if I misspeak, is actually the property behind Lowe's to the left, behind the new, some of the new construction that's going to be going out there. Is that still correct, Ben? It's a conversation I had when I first got in the chair.
Yeah, well, there are two projects. The one that you're referring to, I think what was the name of it? Sager Creek, the cove at Sager Creek. Yeah, that one has been approved, but they have not come forward to actually start the development. And then there was another project that the gentleman's name, I think, was Jimmy Crone, who owned the nursing center. He was going to do a project off of Sherry Whitlock, and he actually got approval for that. But never built that, and that was some years ago. That was probably about 10 years plus ago now for that project. So I'm not really clear the status of that one either.
So we'll gather all the information. I like this type of conversation. I like that we'd be in a little more or less formal environment where we can just talk, like I said, roll up our sleeves and set the best goals possible for our city. And stuff.
And
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
And I agree with Director Smiley. I think we need to reassess. The economy changes, things change, and unfortunately, even when a lot of work has been put into something, sometimes it ends up not being the right thing. So I think reassessing on a regular basis,
Yeah.
I like that.
I agree, because, even a year ago, cost was here, and now it's here, and you got to reassess that cost and our needs, because, coming up soon, Steve, I won't put you on the spot, but I know out at at one of the water plants, they're going to need a lot of work out of there, and that's possibly Steve, $20 million project, if not more, just up. So it's probably a lot more, because just people are flushing things they shouldn't be flushing, and it's causing issues, stations and different things like that. And I invite you, if you get time, let Steve and his staff show you around and look what's going on out there. I mean, there's some turbines that are not even working out there anymore that keep that arm moving, and they haven't worked, Steve, probably in a year or more. And we're going to have to take that whole center piece out, which we're going to try to do things in small increments, but it's going to have to be done. So those are things that we need to probably talk at goal setting to let you know that's coming forward, where you guys have it on your radar, because it is something we're going to have to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think those kinds of things would be valuable to know, because then also the drainage, the streets, the sidewalks.
Well, and a lot of you, I'm sorry.
No, just, we're going to be spending a lot, we are spending and will be spending a lot of money on that, and that affects our goals. What can we afford to do?
And I can ask Tony to be at that, or have Steve have Tony be there, and we can discuss that, because, again, it's kind of like the, you guys coming out and looking at sanitation and walking around and you see the problems. I think it would be really good for you to come out there and do a tour and just look at the problems that we're having when you see the guys having to actually reach in the sewage with a rake. And a lot of it's education, and we're educating our citizens, but still things are being flushed that are just caught, and we don't have the machinery to kick that stuff out, and the only way to get it is with a rake. And these temperatures with things freezing up, I can't even imagine. So I invite you, as time allows, come out, because it was eye-opening for me to do a tour of the facility and see the problems that they're having and the work that they have to do. So again, we'll have something for to discuss on that too. Any other discussions on goals?
Not on goals, but on that, I mean, that would be possibly like a good social media post, like what to do and not do, and share it out. Obviously, too many of these people didn't grow up with a septic tank.
Mark,
You
I
know
invite you
better
to
than-
come out also.
No better than to put anything down the toilet.
Yeah, and it's, again, I won't take up a lot of your time today, because we'll discuss this in the future. Just have that on your radar. That is a big need. Any other discussions? Thank you. I mean, a lot of good information, and I just want to make sure we'll keep a lot of things we were doing, but we'll also add some twist to it to make things a little bit easier and flow a little more smoothly for us. But we'll talk about that.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
think Christina may be able to answer this. About, I don't know, it's been a while, 12, 15 years ago, when major upgrade and major improvement to our treatment plant, do you remember about how much that cost us?
I do,
How much?
40 million.
So, and that's been about that length of time ago, right? So, yeah, I think it's important we get the information out to our citizens that, it has not been that long that we spent that kind of money to upgrade that plant. And at the time, we were actually kind of ahead of the game. And now it sounds like not so much. So I think a really, some sort of campaign to get it out there to the people that, it's your dollars, and we've spent it to upgrade that, to make sure you've got that kind of service available. And now here we are, not that many years down the road, and we're looking at having to make major dollars, an input of a major changeover, an upgrade. So I think it's really important to let them know, this is what it cost this many years ago, and here's where we are today. So I just think it's good information for them to have.
Excellent. Hey, Steve, the plant out there, how old did you tell me I'm putting you on the spot. I think the equipment we have out there, did you tell me it's 20 to 25 years old right now?
No, the equipment at the wastewater plant upgrade was in 2009. So it's only 15 years old. But because there wasn't enough funding, then some things had to be put aside. We have some equipment that's been in operation since, well, it's not in operation anymore, but it was put into operation in 1966. So those are the kind of things we need upgraded. What Alan was talking about a little bit ago, with the screening, that's something I'm currently working on, and Christina and I have been talking. I'm hoping that this project will come in just under, well, not to exceed $6 million, but that'll be for the screening. Because of what Alan was saying with the rags and what have you that come down to the plant, we're just not able to keep up with it. In fact, the guys have to, after the mechanical screen, we have to rake it manually and then put it in a wheelbarrow and haul it off. So this project will have 2 screens One will be for regular use, and then we can rotate. Or when we get heavy rains and the plant's seeing 14 million gallons of wastewater instead of 3 million, then both screens can run. But future, when it comes time for an upgrade, with the cost of things the way they are, the water plant was 30 million, 31 million in 2018. That plant now would be easily 60. It's ridiculous, but it's reality. And we're probably going to be looking at a plant upgrade possibly when the water plant loan gets paid off, to try to continue that sales tax, because that does work really well. That water plant should be paid off in potentially another 3 years. 27? Yeah, so another 3 years. And we just started paying it 2 years ago. It works.
Yeah, and that's the good news, with the sales tax and things that we have some things that'll be rolling off. So they won't roll off for long because we'll have new projects to take their place.
Not intended.
But I thank you, Steve. I kind of put you on the spot there. But again, if you have time, let Steve know, and he'll be happy to give you, and I'll meet you out there. Just give me a tour and just let you see what the guys are having to deal with out there, and the challenges that we're having with that equipment. Like I said, we're good, but something can go out tomorrow. Keep our fingers crossed. Any other questions there? But I will get you something soon. I'll get you a date pretty quickly, because I think this is a discussion we need to have pretty quickly. Just to give you a couple updates, we'll have another meeting tomorrow about gasification. We did find a grant that we will be applying for. It's a tier 2. There's different tiers. We'll be applying for the tier 2. There's some hurdles that we have to go through. It's anywhere from $100 million to, I think the tier is $100 million to $199 million. We have some people wanting to partner with us, so we're looking at different avenues and trying to get you as much information as possible. So it is going to be a process, but we'll get you all the information we can. But we are starting to apply to let people know that, yes, we are interested in these grants, and they're doing a lot of work on that. So we're excited about that. Garbage pickup, I think you saw the email yesterday. Just with all the, and I appreciate your staff, Jason, it's just when things are frozen and there's a lot of sliding, especially black streets, I really didn't want his crew to take a chance of going down there with a garbage truck, because people are parked on the side of the road and slipping and hitting cars. So we've kind of suspended recycling. I think we got back on track today trying to pick up garbage. So hopefully that will get back to normal as the streets, because the streets are looking really good. So we're there. Any other updates that you need or any questions that I can answer, staff can answer for you? Not, Mayor?
Staff would have a better idea if this is appropriate or not. I don't need an answer now. There are traffic issues around the schools at pickup, like, which direction am I? Sherry Whitlock and over there, and then on West Tulsa, but the Sherry Whitlock and Mount Olive. I didn't know if that can be a board goal. That's something we work with the school, if that's even appropriate. Issue, and it's been brought up before, so I thought I would throw it out there.
Yeah, just if I may, I've had conversations with the school district, and just in the last few weeks, that is something, once we get this study completed and we decide, hey, we're going to build a new aquatic center, the new location, we could possibly, I didn't tell them, I said, we could possibly look at selling this land, which maybe helped, because that's been an issue. When I was police chief, the first day I started here, the traffic there is just terrible. But we have the aquatic center and different things there. That could be something we could look at in the future, possibly selling that property or doing something with that property to help that traffic flow. Chris, did I miss anything? Did you want to put anything in there? But those are options that we could look at if we decide to do something else. Our options are limited there right now.
I think one of the things that I hear from the board a lot is the public involvement, public conversations and stuff. So we're looking at whether or not where it would be appropriate and how it would be appropriate to allow a forum for people to come in with that type of consideration that has these type of conversations. So I know that they've done stuff similar to that in the past, but it's something that we're re-exploring and trying to possibly get with Alan in the short term, try to come up with some sort of a appropriate location for people to come. It's not just schools. We also have areas where we get complaints about different areas where one of the current board goals, for example, is about traffic calming. That's an engineering stance. So one of the things we want to try to discuss is have that appropriate location to have those conversations. One of the things that I've talked with Chief Miller just recently about some engineering type of designs that can try to resolve some of these issues, and where it's appropriate to and not to have those locations is kind of based off of best industry practices, best manufacturer installations for specific types of installations, different things like that. But I think it's part of a broader conversation about traffic safety in general. But yes, definitely the school traffic is definitely something that we've had those conversations in-house, and we brought engineering into that conversation. And those are the type of things that if we had the appropriate location, then we could have more of an educated conversation about how to resolve some of these issues and bring in those members of the public that can experience those on the ground and be out there and bring those topics back to us and have a community conversation of how to fix some of these issues. So it's on our radar, and it's something that we'll be sending forward to Alan with a little bit more of a thorough discussion about development plus transportation in general. So it's definitely something that we're working on, and that we definitely work at the behest of the board. So if you had that as a goal, then that would just kind of be in line with what we're already working on.
Just, can I ask you, since it's a state highway, do we have to ask permission? But since it's in the city limits, can we do kind of, if we want to make changes, could we do that without getting their permission? Because it is a state highway. I don't know how that works.
Those, Kevin, these are issues that we have a lot because I get calls, hey, 412's a mess, 59, and I see the crews out. It's just being state highways, we're limited at what we can do. Hey, Kevin, do you want any 2 cents on that?
Yes, so we could propose a project to RDOT, but since they control the road in that location, that would ultimately be theirs to approve or deny. A lot of times for projects that are more wants, then we would be expected to fund that maybe at 100%. So not to say that it can't happen, but they would be permitting and approving any project in that area. They own, specifically at Mount Olive and Sherry Whitlock, they own east and north of that traffic signal is state highway. So any work taking place at the signal has to have RDOT's approval.
Right, and that's as simple as, just like when Whataburger opened, we looked at doing some traffic details and just changing the lights to a yellow blink or a red stopping, and those things have to be approved by RDOT, and we can ask them, but, they don't have to do it. No, we have a good working relationship, but it's just getting things done out there, it's hard. And Kevin, we have something coming up on 412 that RDOT approved? I think it's some of the walkways and by the bridge, kind of give them an update there.
Yes, so we met back in September, we met with RDOT about the Highway 59 overpass over 412, and we requested a side path on that overpass due to our need for a north-south crossing safely across 412, grade separated. And so they've come back and said that they will add that to their project at no cost to the city. That will be several years out. They're just beginning the traffic study and design phase, but that's one of those instances where we're working with them for things like that.
That's good news. Appreciate your input, just a lot of good input and just different things that we will work on, and I will get you a date as quickly as possible, and forward to those conversations. We'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. So, thank you, staff, for being here. Directors, no further comments or questions? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You.